June 6, 1944 D-Day is hailed as the turning point of World War II and a heroic feat of Allied bravery. Thousands of American soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy to liberate Europe from Nazi tyranny. But beneath the patriotic narrative lies a darker, rarely discussed side. Friendly fire massacres, massive civilian casualties, strategic blunders, and acts of chaos unfolded alongside valor. This is not the version taught in school, these are the 10 most shocking, hidden horrors of D-Day. Number 1. Slaughter from the sky, when Americans killed their own. In the chaotic early hours of June 6, 1944, over 13,000 paratroopers from the U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions were dropped into Normandy behind enemy lines to secure key bridges and roads. But a combination of poor weather, heavy anti-aircraft fire, and miscommunication created a deadly mess. Transport planes flew through dense flak zones and lost formation, resulting in widely scattered drops. Some troopers landed directly into enemy-controlled villages, others into flooded marshes where they drowned weighted down by equipment. Tragically, many were also killed by their own side. Off the coast, American Navy gunners, on edge from the German Luftwaffe, mistook returning C-47 transport planes for enemy bombers and opened fire. Units like the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment suffered dozens of deaths, not by Nazis, but by friendly shells. Colonel Edwin Sun, an officer in the 101st, later said, "It was chaos. We feared the enemy, but we feared our own guns just as much that night." In the aftermath, the U.S. Army attempted to quietly downplay the incidents, labeling them as fog of war. If the first American blood shed on D-Day came from friendly fire, how much more of the truth has been buried? Number 2. Bombs for Freedom, the 20,000 French civilians forgotten. In the weeks before and after June 6, Allied bombers dropped more than 76,000 tons of explosives on occupied France, hoping to destroy German supply routes and communication hubs. However, precision bombing was still a fantasy in 1944. American B-17s and British Lancasters often missed targets by miles, especially during night raids or when navigating with unreliable pathfinders. The result? Dozens of Norman towns were obliterated, including Caen, Saint-Lô, Lisieux, and Vire. In Saint-Lô alone, over 350 civilians died in a single night. Eyewitnesses reported charred bodies, mothers clutching children in the rubble, and entire families buried alive beneath collapsed buildings. Total French civilian casualties in the Normandy campaign are estimated to exceed 20,000 dead. What's worse, many victims had been hiding in cellars, believing the Allies wouldn't target their homes. "We waited for liberation," one survivor from Vire recalled. "And they buried us instead." Despite the devastation, Western media rarely covered these tragedies. Churchill later admitted in private correspondence that unnecessary evil had been committed. But many French people saw no justice in being bombed by their supposed saviors. Was it liberation, or a new form of destruction, this time wrapped in Allied flags? Number 3. Omaha Beach, when plans went wrong. At Omaha Beach, American troops expected light resistance. Instead, they ran into Germany's 352nd Infantry Division, well-equipped and well-entrenched. Bombing had failed to destroy bunkers. Amphibious tanks sank before reaching shore. Troops from the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions were mowed down in minutes. One private said it felt like stepping into a blender. Radios were lost, commanders killed, and soldiers pinned for hours on open sand. By day's end, 2,400 Americans were dead or wounded. This wasn't just heroism, it was the price of intelligence failures and overconfidence. The men fought bravely, but they were set up for slaughter. Why are poor leadership decisions erased from the legend of D-Day? Number 4. Executing prisoners, a hidden war crime. In the aftermath of D-Day, American troops captured thousands of German soldiers, but not all were taken to POW camps. At Oudeville-la-Hubert, 30 German prisoners, some of them Waffen-SS, were executed by members of the 101st Airborne. No trial. Just bullets to the back of the head. The killings were covered up. Reports vanished, and officers discouraged talking. Similar incidents happened elsewhere, especially when SS units surrendered. "We weren't interested in taking chances," one soldier recalled. Historian Stephen Ambrose confirmed, "We took prisoners unless we didn't." These actions may have been driven by trauma and revenge, but they remain violations of the Geneva Conventions. Do heroes get a pass for war crimes when history is written by the victors? Number 5. Drowned tanks and doomed engineers. A key part of the Allied plan at Omaha Beach was the use of DD tanks, modified Sherman tanks equipped with flotation screens. They were supposed to swim ashore and support the infantry. But most were launched too far from the coast in choppy seas. Of the 29 tanks launched, 27 sank before reaching land. Crews drowned inside. Engineers tasked with clearing beach obstacles met a similar fate. Many landed under direct machine gun fire, burdened with heavy explosives. Some were killed before they could even unpack their gear. With no tank cover and no cleared paths, the infantry was left stranded on open sand, exposed to fire from fortified cliffs. Survivors recalled using the bodies of fallen comrades as cover. General Omar Bradley later admitted the decision to launch tanks offshore was a gamble and one that cost hundreds of lives. Number 6. Psychological breakdown, shell shock on the sand. The brutal shelling and machine gun fire at Normandy triggered widespread psychological trauma. Many GIs suffered breakdowns, catatonia, or psychosis right on the battlefield. Some were labeled cowards and court-martialed. In reality, their bodies simply couldn't process the horror. By July 1st, over 10,000 U.S. troops were treated for battle fatigue. One medic recalled men sobbing, screaming, or digging graves for themselves while under fire. This trauma haunted survivors for decades, but in 1944, it was barely understood and often dismissed. Number 7. The Greatest Generation and Wartime Looting. While many Allied troops behaved honorably, there were incidents of looting and misconduct. Reports emerged of soldiers raiding homes, stealing wine, jewelry, and food from French civilians. Some soldiers justified it as spoils of war. Others, like General Dwight D. Eisenhower, issued stern warnings against theft, though enforcement varied. In war's fog, morality blurred. The liberators weren't always saints, and not every house pillaged belonged to Nazis. Number 8. The bloody cost of success, 10,000 Allied casualties in one day. D-Day is often celebrated as a clean victory. In reality, it came at a staggering human price. On June 6 alone, Allied forces suffered an estimated 10,000 casualties, including over 4,400 confirmed dead. This made it one of the bloodiest days of the entire war for American forces. The beaches were littered with bodies, torn limbs, and blood-soaked sand. Victory came, yes, but it was bought with oceans of blood and unspeakable pain. Number 9. Propaganda versus reality, sanitized newsreels. American media quickly framed D-Day as a triumph. Newsreels showed waving GIs, smiling French villagers, and cinematic heroism. What they didn't show were bloated corpses, mangled teens, or mass graves. Footage was censored. Journalists were embedded with strict guidelines. The goal? To maintain morale at home even if it meant hiding the truth. One life photographer admitted he couldn't publish many of his D-Day shots, they were too real. Too bloody. Too raw. Number 10. The French resistance left in the cold. Despite years of risking their lives, many French resistance fighters felt ignored or sidelined during and after D-Day. They expected arms, support, and coordination. Instead, many received vague orders or were told to stand down. Only later were some integrated into Allied plans. Until then, they were often viewed with suspicion. In the end, the liberation of France wasn't just about tanks and troops, it was about trust. And many brave locals felt betrayed.